Hello there, and a very warm welcome along to another episode of Paws For Thought, brought to you by the Greyhound Board of Great Britain. Greyhound Derby special, of course. Only 12 remain in this year's Greyhound Derby. I'm, as ever, joined by Irish Greyhound racing expert Ian Fortune. How are you, Ian?
Yeah, good, Dave. Good. Really looking forward to Saturday's action.
Yeah, and a talented dozen remain in this year's Derby. We've only got 3 races left.
Yeah, 3 races left. What are you talking? You're talking less than a minute and a half of action. Yeah, and still we're no closer to knowing the winner, because realistic claims could be made for certainly 7 or 8 of the remaining 12. Obviously, there will be some shorter prices than others, but genuinely, this is one of those derbies where, an astute missile could yet emerge. We're after seeing the likes of Smurf's Machine producing a sensation run the other night. He wasn't on the radar really ahead of last Saturday's action. So, still room for a dog or two to spring a surprise, and yeah, really enthralling couple of weeks ahead of us.
And still very much a strong Irish presence as well, Ian.
Yeah, five of the 12. Perhaps a little bit unlucky not to have 6, but listen, you take what you can get. We came over with, what was it, 14 of the original 96. I think it works out around 15%, and we're now in a situation where we're just under half. So, a fine showing. But as I said, like, those that were making the commitment to come over, we're going to be bringing the proper dogs. So it wasn't a case of, there was no hangers on as such. We knew that any dogs coming over were capable of producing big runs on the night, and thankfully 5 of them are still there, and all 5 capable of a big run still in this year's derby. Although the draw has been tricky now for 1 or 2 of them. We'll get onto that later on, but yeah, really cracking derby. Added to that, the 5 Irish runners, there are those 3 or 4 from England that are really performing at top level at present as well.
Yeah, we will look at the semi-final draw a little bit later. We'll also be hearing from Ben Keith from Star Sports, one of the sponsors this year's Greyhound Derby as well. So looking forward to that. Well, let's get straight into the action then, Ian, because the first Derby quarterfinal on Saturday night was an Irish 1-2. You was, fair play to you, was very adamant that Wolf, who goes in trap 5 here, would be able to cheat what looked an awkward draw. It was Culavani Chick who chased him home, the Irish bitch, and Deanridge Rapid as well on the run to the corner certainly aided the calls of Wolf moving across. But he's one of the oldest in the competition, but he's still got plenty of zip about him, Ian, and he's a very talented greyhound as Wolf.
Yeah, very talented greyhound. But when you consider after the Easter Cup, he had 4 or 5 months layoff. So he's a fresh greyhound. He hasn't had all that much racing this year. Big run the other night. It's mainly down to the likes of the Racing Post TV and that fantastic head-on camera that it helps you come up with these decisions. And I just decided that Wolf, where he would edge across, I thought he'd wait for the room. We've seen the head-on when he took a bump earlier on. He straightened up. He's not diving across like he used to. He's obviously a year older. Like he's a veteran next month. So yeah, big run from him. But I also thought the bitch ran an incredible race in second, Culavani Chick. I thought that was a massive run by her in defeat, because we did highlight the fact that she hits a flat spot down the back straight. Well, Paul Lawrence said the other night on Racing Post television, and probably a lot to be said for it, he said she might be just a little bit of a kidder, keeping a little bit for herself. When she's challenged at third, she goes again. The other night she had something to aim at down the back straight. She didn't lose any ground on Wolf down the back straight. And any dog that can say that, well, they're really racing, because Wolf really hammers down the back. He was the fastest heat winner, and she lost nothing in defeat. Deanridge Rapid, he's just not going to the corner fast enough. He did edge inwards in the early yards, perhaps did take a few bumps, didn't quite get the momentum going, but he's going to need to be sharper at boxes going forward. But, there's no question he's a big engine. It's just a case of whether he can sharpen up.
Yeah, what do we make of him, Ian? Because I remember asking you at the start of the Derby, Deanridge Rapid, and you said, we've definitely not seen the best of this one. He's trialled well. He's very well regarded by connections. He's still in there. He's not won a round yet, but he's still in there. Qualification is the name of the game. How good do you think he is, and what have we not seen yet of him?
I don't know how good he is or how good he can be. We judged him on sprinting performances in Ireland, and he wasn't going to the corner in those. It was coming home. He was flying home against good sprinting types up the long stretch in Dundalk. So very hard to assess what he was going to be over 4 bends. When we saw the trials, we said, well, he probably has enough speed to go to the corner with the likes of these over 4 bends, but it just hasn't. We haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen him really hit the lids, to be honest, and get that clear run into the corner that he will need probably on Saturday night. I still think there's plenty more in him. Obviously he's very well bred tracker, and he has an engine. There's no question about that. It's just a case of where does he do his best running. At the moment, he's looking like an all-rounder, a dog with just good, solid pace from start to finish. And as we know from the years, you need to be doing something special, be it going to the corner or finishing like an express train or flying down the back. He just seems to be doing all three well and not sort of excelling in any of those departments.
Yeah, solid all-rounder, but he's still in there pitching. We'll see how he goes in the semi-final. 29.47, the winning time there. And then it was Richard Reese's Southwood Jet who sort of emulated the performance of Wolf, really. Another ground with seemingly a tricky draw out in trap 5, Ian. And he was to clear. Very, very impressive. Troy Firebird in trap 6 chased him home, and the other qualification place went to Patrick Jansen's Lenson Whelan, another qualifier who's not won a round yet, but very impressive from Southwood Jet, who's still unbeaten, of course.
Yeah, and we wanted to see him do another sub 5 second split, and that's what he did. He even took a little bump at boxes, does a 4.96. It was the way he quickened up in those first few strides. He comfortably leading by the winning line first time up. My only slight concern is the fact that Troy Firebird is just nearly on his heels off at the opening corner. He's just off him at the opening corner. And okay, I know Troy Firebird is a very talented greyhound, but we just haven't seen Southwood Jet up against perhaps one of the real early speedsters. That big test will come on Saturday night, but to the eye, he's just such a beautiful moving greyhound, and his colouring as well. There's just something about him. He looks like luxury goods. Do you know, that sort of has that touch of class about him, just that real style about him. Very impressive greyhound, and one that I'm looking forward to watching again in the future. I only look back at a few of his races from Ireland last night, and my God, he's taken some jump from Ireland to England. His first run in Hove was so impressive. And then he's learned every single night in Nottingham, and he's just getting better and better. Trap 1 the next night. It'll be interesting to see how he breaks from Trap 1. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Lenson Whelan, without question, the luckiest dog on the night to qualify, because he was out with the washing. Blue Tick George was just like robbed of a place perhaps in the next round. Final Mad just completely squeezing him up at that third turn. Troy Firebird ran a big race in defeat. Massive run by him. Obviously couldn't live with Southwood Jet down the back straight, but staying on again. And he's only beaten a length and a quarter in 29.54. And again, we keep referring to those wide seeds. They're going to get their draw. Okay, If the three of them go through, we're going to have 3 wide seeds in the final. No one could see that happening at the start of the competition. But yeah, if he's in trap 6, there's no way you can rule him out, because he just has plenty of pace, plenty about him. And there is just something about him. You can see that desire. That he's chasing it hard. That's the main thing.
And Southwood Jet, and you mentioned you went back and looked at the Irish form. If you'd watched that before we'd raced over here, the company kept in Ireland wasn't top level. So you would be amazed at what he's achieved now. I mean, he's a testament to connections. Absolutely.
Very much so. Now, don't get me wrong. He probably didn't look the finished article in Ireland. He was showing plenty of pace, just not quite coming away like he's now, going to the corner like he is now, but just seems to everything. The pennies dropped with him. And, great credit to Richard Reese. Like, obviously great pedigree. They know how to do a greyhound. And it's clear that, well, Southwood Jet is certainly doing it right. He's now 6 from 6 in England. That's fair achievement considering the company he's been keeping between Derby, Trial Stakes. Even his first race in Hove was relatively hot. So, really nice greyhound. And we haven't hit the ceiling yet with him. Just concerned about the draw the next night, but for qualifying purposes, he'd certainly be one of the first names you put down.
Yeah, very, very impressive. 29.54 for Southwood Jet. We move on to the third quarterfinal, and Seamus Cahill, Smurfs Machine, doing the business here, Ian. And Seamus, of course, being the only trainer left in who's been there, done it, and got the T-shirt and won the English Greyhound Derby before. Very, very impressive performance. This dog has got nice early speed. He's going down the back well as well. It was Churchill Holly that also qualified, as well as a dog that I see as almost a warrior, really. Ballydoyle Valor is a strong running salt. He's got the heart of a lion. He's powerful, and he's just one of them dogs that just wants to keep qualifying, wants to compete, and he'll chase hard all the way to the line.
Yeah, of all the dogs left in the Derby, he's the one dog that's running the third bend best. He just seems to run it like he's on rails. You hear people speaking about the third bend at Nottingham. This fellow, it doesn't matter where he was on the outside or the inside, he's just going to rail it, just going to drive it. But Smurfs Machine, a brother to Dearjet Sydney, of course, started his career down in Youghal in Ireland. But we're watching him growing up again. Like I spoke about Coulivanny Chick last week. This fellow, like I know he's had 12 races in the UK. He just seems to be getting to where he should be. Like he does a 491 the other night, and you wouldn't say he took a flyer from traps. But my God, he raced into that opening corner. Churchill Holly obviously moved in, gave him plenty of room to race. But he's a dog that's very much coming forward. I was impressed with him in the opening round, and as a result, tipped him up last week. Of course, he was third last week, but I abandoned him this week, and he pops up now. I will admit to it, I had a couple of quid on him. I just thought from the draw he was one of the runners that was perhaps most likely to get a clear run. Thought 4 and 5, Swanley Chick and Churchill Holly might have clashed, but that didn't happen. Churchill Holly again runs a big race in second spot. She is running to that line. Like Ballydoyle Valor isn't too far off her down the back straight, and you'd fear for her as regards holding on for second spot. But as it was, she came right to the line. She's running very well for Lynn Cook. Congratulations to them. And I see the Mankind Syndicate, they're pretty prominent on Twitter. They seem delighted with their progress, but so too are Justin and Pat Muldoon with Ballydoyle Valor, and he's one of those dogs where if there's a gap, he'll try and get through it, and who's to say he might be in an English Derby final yet for Graham Holland. But no, very impressive with Smurf Machine. He will need to keep trapping like that to really make waves in a week and a half's time, but there's no question, he's a fast greyhound with a big future.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you mentioned there, I saw an interview with Teresa Cahill, obviously Seamus, his wife, the trainer Seamus, and she mentioned, he is a lightly raced dog, and he probably missed out on the latter part of his puppy age, as it were, to compete in puppy races because we had the lockdown. So he's lacking in experience. He turned up at Central Park and he looked like a nice dog, but he was a little bit hit and miss at the boxes. He was showing good pace to the corner, finding a little bit of trouble, showing a bit down the back, and sometimes again finding a bit of trouble. I think he had a 29.01 on his card, so you could tell he could run. But yeah, he's really come of age, hasn't he? And as I say, you get to this stage and we get to the semi-finals, and it's almost the most nervous part of the derby because you're so close to the final, which is the big race. Once you're there. It's a race and you're in against 5 other dogs and anything can really happen. But Seamus has, of course, been there before, Ian, and that calmness, that confidence and composure. Yes, he's an experienced trainer and he's won a lot, but he has been here before, and I do think that counts for quite a lot.
It does, it really does. And you were speaking there about Smurfs Machine. Sometimes the Irish dogs have an advantage in a sense where our puppy competitions in Ireland tend to be for more dogs. So you get 3-4 runs at a track. They get to learn their business. They get to learn the game. And there are quite a few puppy competitions in Ireland, and they do get that chance to stay in puppy competitions for that little bit longer. Whereas in England, you tend to have 2-run stakes. So all of a sudden they're getting to grips with the place, and all of a sudden, that competition's over. Let's move to the different tracks. And your tracks, some of your tracks are very different from each other. Whereas, okay, there are 1 or 2 in Ireland that are very different from each other, but as a rule, they're generally sort of similar enough dimensions and a style of running needed. And while Smurfs Machine has been moved around a bit, now all of a sudden he's had those 4 races in Nottingham, and he's getting comfortable in the place, and you can see it happening for him. And that's the key. And as you said, Seamus Cahill at the end of the lead. He's won a derby before. That definitely stands for something. Of course, Pat Buckley and Graham Holland have won derbies, not an English derby, and there is a difference.
Absolutely, yeah. And good point there, actually, I think, made about the puppy stakes, both in Ireland and the UK. Right, we move on then to the fourth quarter final. 29.49 was the winning time for Knocknable Sid. It was a Pat Buckley 1-2. Dearjet Sydney also qualifying from Trap 1. And Distant Village back in third for Matt Dartnell. But Knocknable Sid not put a paw wrong yet so far in this derby. He's been brilliant, Ian.
Hasn't seen a rival. I would have had him in and around maybe number 11 on our team when we started with 14, but the same could have been said for Price's Blake last year. And just dogs take the tracks. He's also a lightly enough race dog coming over. He's only July 18, so he's continuing to improve. And again, I use that phrase, he's growing up in front of our eyes. And well, the way this fellow's growing up, he's going to be a fair achiever by the time he's fully grown. Big run by him again. Dearjet Sydney, I thought, produced a fantastic run too. A dog that I did state that he's not quite as vulnerable if he doesn't lead as Knocknable Sid. you saw Deirdre Sydney running right to that winning line again.
Yeah.
He's only beaten a half length in the finish. Didn't get his kick. Does a 5:01. I was predicting maybe doing a 4:90, but trap ones, you said it on Twitter the other night, they aren't flying from the inside box. It's not the bingo box. There's no question, no matter how much they've changed the traps and whatnot. Plenty of dogs running well from the inside, but they're not just going bingo. He does 4:97, 4:92, and then does 5:01 the other night when we were expecting perhaps to do a 4:90. But big run by first and second. Distant Village obviously was 3.5 lengths behind him. He gets sent sideways on the opening corner, but gathered momentum and emerged a comfortable enough third into the back straight, and did well to hold Clara Icon, which is an achievement in itself. Pat Buckley perhaps a little bit unlucky. I dare say if Dear Jetsony had hit the lids, Glengar Bale probably does go around a clear third. And
Yeah,
we
I
know
agree with
that
that.
as a son of Droopy Smasher, he'll probably qualify the way the race panned out after that. But who's to say Clara Icon mightn't have been on his heels at the second bend? We never know. But no, Pat, a little bit unlucky, but I'm sure he would have taken 2 of the 3 to qualify. And they really are there with massive chances looking ahead to the rest of the Derby. Distant Village again, another wide seat through. He's just going to have to find that couple of yards somewhere along the line, either be it to the corner or going to have to do something special from off the pace, because at the moment he's just not quite in the reckoning for Derby glory, although he's still there.
Yeah, and interesting about the boxes, you saw I flagged it up on Twitter in the week. Obviously, last year it became quite apparent that those drawn down the middle were certainly breaking a lot better at Nottingham. And fair play to Nottingham, they listened to feedback from connections, they changed the boxes. And it's only really become apparent to myself, anyway, in my opinion, that I think we're seeing a similar trend in that dogs are certainly breaking better out of 3 and 4. Now, it'd be interesting. We'll talk about the draw a little bit later on in the semi-finals, but Southwood Jet, as of course, he's won from Trap 1 before, and he's got Trap 1 in the semi-final. Is that something that you think we should be looking out for, Ian?
It's definitely something to keep in mind. Obviously there's so much to keep in mind when you're making a selection, but Southwood Jet, we referred to it last week. We'll refer to it again. Southwood Jet, he's had 3 runs from Trap 1 in recent weeks. 5:06, 5:09, and this is going to be his third. But beg your pardon, he did 5:09 on the 24th in the Derby Trial Stake. He does 5:06 in the 14th in September in the Derby Trial Stake, and 5:09. Now that was the wet night, so you can take probably 10, 12 spots off that. But it's clear that his best splits have been from the middle or from further out. It would be just interesting to see if he did happen to, come away moderately, doing only a 5:02 or a 5:03. Knocknabull Sid looks likely to do a 4:90 at least in the middle again. And then all of a sudden, Cool If Any Chick is capable of doing a 5 seconds on the outside. Just might leave Southwood Jet just that little bit more vulnerable, because we haven't seen him headed in England. And whereas he was strong in Ireland, his racing style may have just changed. Like, he leads by 2 or 3 lengths at one point last week, and he wins a length and a quarter from Troy Farbird. If a Ballydoyle Valor or Distant Village were on his tail at the second bend, he's in third spot, you'd worry a little bit. But who's to say what could happen? For all we know, he's going to pop out, lead clear on the corner, and he starts 6-4 favourite in the Derby final. I'm just concerned by the draw. I would say, having seen the last few weeks, I would say Richard Rees would have taken Trap 3 with real glee, as it is Trap 1. Just that it's a niggling concern, although everything he's shown in recent weeks would suggest he's ever more the professional than he was, and he's improving all the time.
Yeah, certainly an intriguing aspect to the Derby this year. We've got the 2 semi-finals on Saturday. Now, I don't know if you've had a look at the supporting card, but we've got a real variety. We've got British bred races, we've got puppy races, we've got a fantastic staying competition as well, Ian. And we've now, semi-final night and final night, they are almost festival nights in themselves, aren't they?
And that's the way it should be, Dave. This is your time to showcase the sport, to get the very best greyhounds you can possibly do, highlight your own British breeding, bring over a few Irish Raiders, and there are a few extra there. Top class stayers, it really is a terrific card. That staying event is just, I know I have a sweet spot for the stayers anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just salivating. Like, 3 heats there, and they're just, like, there's such quality in it. Like, you're talking about really brilliant 4-bend performers stepping up and trip. You're talking top class 8 eight benders stepping down in trip, and then you're talking about the likes of the Roxon Christoph, who, you know, we saw winning the three steps, like really serious greyhounds. You know, it's that, like, that's just that little cherry on top. It's the real bonus to the night. The Derby Plate is a cracking contest. You know, it just, from start to finish, the action on Saturday night is just going to be brilliant. And then with the added bonus of the likes of the Durando and probably an open class sprint on final night, two brilliant nights racing. And, you know, showcase your sport, get it out there, let as many people know that, you know, this is what we're about. And as we've always said, Dave, variety is the spice of life. Mix it up a bit. We're going to have probably races over 4, 5, 6 maybe distances in Derby final night. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And look out for the action, of course, live on Racing Post Ground TV, Sky Channel 175, and in the betting shops as well, if they are open indeed. But, you know, you'll be able to enjoy the action from the comfort of your own home. Right, before we move on to the action on Saturday, I did catch up with Martin Chapman, Lofty from Star Sports, one of the sponsors, obviously the Derby being the Star Sports and ARC Greyhound Derby, and the bookmaker Star Sports. They've been taking bets for 18 months now on this year's Derby. Can you guess which dog, Ian, is their worst loser in the book?
Well, going by Martin's whinging over the last few weeks, I dare say Diedrich Rapid is certainly one of them, because I know he's been ducking and diving him. But you'd imagine that they've been popular, you know, they've been popular betting during the week. You'd imagine something like a Deerjet Sydney or Knocknabool Sid are popular. You'd imagine Southwood Jet are probably a loser as well. Outside of that, you know, it's often something that was at a big price, maybe a Troy Firebird or a Distant Village that they're avoiding. But no, I know Dean Ridge Rapid is one that I have to be avoiding, because, as I said, Martin has been doing some whinging about him the last few weeks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's the worst result in the book for Star Sports. So if you want to cheer on the punters in the Derby this year, Dean Ridge Rapid is the one. Also, Distant Village as well. I caught up with Matt Dartnell a few months ago, and he was telling me, you know, he might not be the fastest dog in the country, but the owners are very keen. Let's put it that way. So they've had some serious bets each way. So that's another one that Star Sports would be quite happy to see at the back of the semi-final stage as well.
A very shrewd kennel that happens to be filled with shrewd owners.
Yeah, no coincidence. That Wolf a small loser. And ironically, Ian, the two that you mentioned might be popular. The two unbeaten greyhounds in this year's Derby, Knocknabool Sid and Southwood Jet, they're actually being cheered on by Star Sports because they're pretty friendless in the outright book. And they're also cheering on Deerjet Sydney as well. So quite surprising that, really, that the dogs that have really lit up the Derby are actually, you know, a little bit friendless in the betting thus far.
That's a nice trio to have running for you.
Yeah, not half. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Right. Also, of course, a little bit earlier on this week, I had the pleasure of catching up with Mr. Star Sports himself, and the man really pushing the issue to sponsor the Derby, Ben Keith, and here's what he had to say. Well, you join us talking all things Star Sports and ARC Greyhound Derby, and I'm absolutely delighted to say that I'm joined by Mr. Star Sports himself, Ben Keith. How are you, Ben?
Dave, I'm very, very well. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Let's jump straight in then, Ben. We go back to 2017 or 2016, really, but 2017, you stepped up to sponsor the Derby. It was £175,000 to the winner at Toaster. Tell me about your decision to become the sponsor, step in and put your name to the competition.
Right. You said a minute ago, you said it's about spreading the word. Okay. Now, very good friend of mine, Max Shoes. Everybody at the Dogs knows Max. Max has owned lots of dogs. Lots of people will remember him from Claw and Paddy, right? Now, I met Max many years ago at Walthamstow. Okay, you know, it was a bit of a den there, and I met and took on all comers. Okay, but Max always told me something. He said a dog track will give you everything. When you go to a dog track, you will meet every type of person. You'll meet people that you ruck with early, but then you end up being great friends with. You will make great lifelong friends. You'll meet people that you'll do completely different business with. Property, lawyers. You know, when you meet people, you're socialised to do it. Oh, hello, yeah. You like dog racing, and suddenly you're mates, aren't you? And it's like, where do you go? How long have you been going? Tell me about the dogs you own. Tell me about your first bet. And it's like, it's just sort of like suddenly you're friends, aren't you? Right? Now, when I was 12, 13, I think I was 12 years old, my dad came home from work, he said, right, I'm going to the dog work do. My mum didn't want to go. She said, you go with your dad. I said, I don't want to go. She said, go on, off you go with your dad. Walked into the dog track, sat in the restaurant at Hove, looked over the betting ring. The lights came up when the hare was running. The hare is on the move. My first £2 bet won. That was that. That was that. Nothing else was going to happen, right? And I think that when you think in life that often your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, my greatest weakness was the only thing that I knew about was bookmaking. I read everything. I was the school bookie. I took every piece of work experience. They called me the professor at Hove Dogs. I used to walk around with a little notepad making notes on all tic-tac, racing language, form stuff, Lofty, who he taught me a lot then. He got me started. But what I remember, and where I'm going with this waffling, is everybody was so welcoming. You're 12 or 13 years old, they're all trying to blag you in for free. You'd be invited to the kennels on a Sunday at Albourne, you'd get to walk this, I had a bet on this dog last night, it won an A1. I'm walking it now. It's like bringing, Linford Christie for a walk, isn't it? And I think that as I've gone on, I think that once dog racing is in your heart, when you in a good time, in a bad time, and you have that life reset, you go back to the dogs, right? It's sort of, when you go to some type of social function, or it's not really what you want to do, you feel that you've got to go, you go in, you feel a bit awkward. It's a bit like I don't like going to the opera. Right? Yeah, but I have to go once every decade. Going, it's a bit stuffy. I'm not enjoying this. When's it ending? When I go to a dog track, I can walk up to anybody. I can make a joke. They've all got gallows humour. I can go and stroke a dog at the pick-uppy bit. You can have a chat with anybody and you can get going. And I'm completely at peace with myself. So I go forward in my career and I think to myself, well, what do I really want to do? I want to bet in the front row at Cheltenham. I want to bet in the front row at Ascot. I want to lay the biggest clients in the world head to head as credit punters. You start ticking these things off. I want a website, I want shops, I want And one thing I wanted to do for myself and for the sport and all of the people I love is make that difference and really just say thank you, right? So I can't begin to tell you what pleasure it gives to me. I mean, I think that, look, in business, there's all these naff phrases and it's, look, what's the return on investment? And essentially, let's be honest about it. Look, Dave, you back winners for a living, okay? It is all about ROI at the end of the day. Once everything's finished, what's the bottom line? Sponsoring the Dog Derby costs a lot of money, but it's not that bad. On final night, I mean, it doesn't get, Royal Ascot and Cheltenham, you can add them both together. The first night at Toaster, we took nearly 300 grand across 3 pitches. That's unheard of. It was electric. Yeah, you win a few quid on the anti-post, but all right, there's a lot of signage and adverts, and it's never just the cost and the staffing. So it's always a lot more than you think it is. But I can get back, as long as I don't lay the winner outright, I can get back 2/3 of my money. Yeah. And I've made a contribution. I've enjoyed it. I've stood by the sport. And I think that here's something now. You could call me and say, look, why don't you go and sponsor Leighton Orient? Probably many more people and different people are going to see that. Right. I don't know how much it costs to sponsor Leighton Orient. It's probably similar money, isn't it? Right.
It's about brand awareness, yeah.
This is it. But the point is it sort of goes over the face. Like, I've got no connection with Leighton Orient, right? Now, essentially, when I go to the dogs, I do find clients, not just a punter to play with me that night, who go on and bet with me. We all see it in greyhound racing. New big owners come in, they spend big money, they're with the top trainers. If they're a punter, let's be honest about it, they're going to come to me. If they want to start having 5, 10, 20, 30 grand bets, they've got to come to me, right? So it's I'm sponsoring the best thing in a sport I love, and I hope to do it for the rest of my life. And to be honest with you, I would recommend to anybody, if they become a bookie and they have that, it might be fishing, it might be snooker, it might be whatever it is. If they've got that nicheified passion that is connected to gambling, if they sponsor it, it is a bit like they're giving, and the people in that sport will give back to them.
Okay, we'll talk about your relationship with the sport and the derby itself there, but what about the derby itself? Because you do know the sport. I know you're not exactly an avid follower of the form book, but you know the landscape of the sport. Talk to me about how important you feel the derby is to the sport and industry itself.
Look, when I think about the Greyhound Derby, I think that it is incredibly important for the sport to have a showcase event, right? It's a bit like, look, let's say that all in with everything, it's never quite that, it's a bit more. Let's say it's a bit over 100. Let's say each year it costs me about 110 to sponsor it. I think I get more for that than I get for if I sponsored 11 competitions for 10 grand each. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think that it's been absolutely vital that we have continued with the derby this year. Now, the option was put to me, we don't have to, don't worry about it, corona, let's go on till next year. What I just worry about is that momentum would have been broken, and I'm very pleased that everybody's rallied round, and we have had the derby, we've done our very best. As usual, you've done superbly, Dave, on everything. I believe that Julie Collier and Lofty have also really, they've fully gone up a gear with their social media stuff. I'm very grateful to Nathan and Rachel at Nottingham, and we've rallied round. But I think that it's during the bad times it's most important to keep going.
Absolutely, and it was absolutely vital that we had a derby this year, and as you say there, Ben, despite everything, the show has gone on, despite the fact that you mentioned about your costs you sign off against, perhaps being able to get a few quid back on the joint on the night. Well, there was always a chance that wasn't going to happen.
Absolutely, but I just thought at the end of the day, this year, I think I just had to take one for the team. Do you know what I mean? And keep it going. And please God that future derbies, I'll say to you, look, I had a right result there, or whatever. But I think that essentially, I would like to sponsor the Greyhound Derby for the rest of my career. So please God, that's going to be many of them. Well, if one of them's a bit, so what? Let's just pretend this year that I laid the winner massive anti-post, and so I didn't have that lovely, way to get money back on the big night,
And obviously, it is brilliant that it's on. Are we right to assume that we're not setting precedent that the top prize will be £50,000 next year?
It should, of course, be a six-figure sum. It's the premier event. Will it be? I don't know. I think that William Hill's contribution, Ralph Topping and Kate Miller did the sport proud at Wimbledon. But Dave, what did the prize money get up to? It was wasn't it like £250,000 or something mental?
Yeah, Rio Quattro, 250,000. Yeah.
What I think is look, that's fantastic, and I'm not going to criticise, but I am. You know what I'm going to say now, which is so completely unfair, and it's a bit like if either of them deign to listen to my interview, which I'm sure they won't, they say, well, thanks for that. But it was a bit like they sort of set it up for a fall. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, I understand. Of course I do. Look at the Greyhound Derby. You've got dogs in it that cost 50, 100 grand. Of course the prize should be 100 grand to the winner. But I think 250 was it showboating. Do you know what I mean? Great for Rio Quattro. I'm sure that the owners were absolutely delighted. But, here's the thing, is that I believe in long-term business. I believe growing business on sustainable foundations. Let's keep it real. What's coming in? Let's do a business deal, Dave. Let's go and buy a Ford Fiesta, with Max shoes at the car auction for £2,000. Have it mended. It owes us £2,500. Sell it for £3,000. This is business. You look at how betting's being done in America at the moment. One of the top, Brad Allen, he did an article yesterday. He said that in one of these states, something like 13 million came in revenue from punters. They'd given out 12.3 million in free bets. Do you know what I mean? We live in this world where promises on a stock market and what we're going to do is worth more than pounds, shillings and pence. That's not how I do business. And I think that the problem is when you have enormous corporations involved, there are obvious advantages. They're going to go, what's 150, make it 250. Right, okay, don't worry about tea at the Ritz. It's a night at the Ritz for everybody. Everybody can arrive on final night in a helicopter. But when they go and their show ends, unless you have somebody else who wants to come in and make an unviable splash in business terms, it's going to come crashing down.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, you mentioned about how special the derby is to yourself, how special the derby is to the industry and the sport itself. The people involved, obviously, connected with the dogs still in the derby. We're at the semi-final stage. Now, the week leading up to the final is always the biggest in anyone's life. The trainer, the owner. Looks likely that we're probably not going to see a lavish and extravagant Star Sports Derby lunch like we usually do, which is a big shame. We see a Star Sports Ground Derby Zoom lunch. Is that what we think we're going to be seeing?
I honestly know nothing. As I say, we started chatting at midday. Literally, Kim texted me at 11:55. So I'm sorry, I don't know.
But I'm sure you'll make the effort, as you always do, Ben.
I'll do something.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, we are at the semi-final stage. Only 12 remain. A talented dozen at that. I couldn't let you go, Ben, without, of course, posing the biggest question of them all to you, and that's who is going to win this year's Star Sports and Art Ground Derby.
Right. Okay. Well, one thing I've noticed, as have other people, is who follow you on Twitter, Dave. I've got a friend of mine. I won't mention who it is, but he sends me your tweets, and he sends me after you've done your double tips. He sends me a tweet. Just another winner. They all win. How do they win?
They don't all win. I'm not sure they all win.
I wouldn't want to be laying them. But what one thing is that just in my own muggy way, I love Wolf. What a dog to own! What a game dog! You know when he hits the front. I mean, what a dog to watch on the bunny. That's a dog, isn't it? Proper dog, right? And you backed Wolf, didn't you, early?
I may well have done, yeah.
Now, the annoying thing is this, right? So we've got the WhatsApp at work, the big bet, so it'll come through. Anyway, it comes through. Dave Clark, whatever it is, or wherever it was, you said you backed it, and I was like, oh come on, I wanted that one on side, right? But but I love Wolf. I'd love to see him win the Greyhound Derby. I think that. Look. Is there a box office dog in this year's Derby? There isn't really a complete box office.
He could be it. Yeah.
This is it. But I think that when you look at him, like, that is a dog. He's got charisma, hasn't it? And look, as somebody who's sponsoring the Greyhound Derby, as long as he's not sticking out as a loser. I mean, I spoke to Lofty earlier. Look, we fielded about 70 grand on the event. Dean Ridge, we've got two losers in the book. Dean Ridge Rapid loses about 80 to 100. Distant Village loses 40. Now, Box City, but Lofty said, look, I don't think either are going to win. We'll probably get away with it. But I think that really, I want to see a dog win that does somehow get some fizz, right? And when you look at Wolf, I think he's exciting, and I think I loved it when a Shoot Missile won. I mean, he's my old pal, isn't he, at 28 to 1? But I mean, I think for the game, we do want, look at horse racing, Cato, Star, Frankel, da-da-da-da-da, you know what I mean?
He's the one. He's the one for you then, Ben. Right, we'll keep an eye out for him. We've got only 3 races left in this year's Derby, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely brilliant. I thank you for your time, as ever, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Dave, thank you very, very much indeed. I'm very grateful.
Well, absolutely fantastic to hear from Ben Keith there. And of course, there are only 3 races left in this year's Greyhound Derby. The 2 semi-finals on Saturday night, and then the big one for £50,000 on Saturday, the 31st of October. We're now going to look at semi-finals. Ian Fortune joins me here. Semi-final number 1, Southwood Jets up on the inside against Knocknable City. It looks a little bit of a match. Someone's O has got to go here. They're the 2 unbeaten Greyhounds, Southwood Jet and Knocknable City. And it looks like a little bit of a shootout to the corner between them, Ian.
It does. It really does. I think Quarterfinal Chick can be prominent on the outside, but in terms of pure early speed, Southwood Jet and Knocknable City are the big 2. And it all depends on what Southwood Jet does at traps. I don't want to keep harking on about it, but trap 1 is just that little niggling concern. But by all accounts, if he traps on level terms, it's not just going to be a great race. It's going to be a great contest into the opening bend. And the only 2 dogs I see going up completely straight are Southwood Jet and Ballydoyle Valor. I think neither will budge off. We saw Ballydoyle Valor going up straight from 5. We've seen him going up straight from 1. So there's no reason to suggest he won't go up straight from trap 2. And we know that Southwood Jet will certainly stay tight to the fence. Yeah, very interesting. Dean Ridge Rapid may edge inwards. That'd be a concern for Ballydoyle Valor, but Knocknable Sid too will edge inwards. But I couldn't imagine he'll edge in as much as Dean Ridge Rapid, so he should get a clear run. Distant Village, if he's going to do anything, he's going to step right, and that's a concern for Quarterfinal Chick. But she too herself can step right at boxes. So hopefully we're looking at a relatively cleanly run race, and that's what you want in a Derby semi-final, and the top 3 to emerge. On the strength of his middle draw, I'm going to go with Knocknable Sid just to get that corner. And thereafter, I think Quarterfinal Chick will qualify if he just avoids a bump from Distant Village and obviously Southwood Jet. Not in that order. I obviously think Knocknable Sid is my selection. Southwood Jet won't be too far away at any point in this contest. And Quarterfinal Chick may be just the 3rd one home. So that's the way I'm going to go. I'm going to go 4-1-6, but, really looking forward to it. It's a cracking contest. And I just wouldn't be surprised if anything happened in it, because if Knocknable Sid and Southwood Jet arrive at the corner at the exact same time, you never know. One's 32.5 kilos, one's 34.5 kilos. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and I'll sort of talk about the UK trained runners in Southwood Jet on the inside for Richard Rees. He is unbeaten for very enthusiastic owner Jeremy Hayes. Ray Dean and Paul Surridge, 2 huge supporters of ground racing, and trainer Alison Kelly Pilgrim, their Dean Ridge Rapid goes in 3. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, the very keen Distant Relations Syndicate that own Distant Village, he's another one who's yet to win a round in this year's Derby for trainer Matt Dartnell, who has been to the final before. What can you tell us about connections of the Irish train runners, Ian?
Well, obviously Graham Holland trains Ballydoyle Valor. You know plenty about Graham. Obviously 3 times Irish Derby winner. Justin and Pat Muldoon, 2 real enthusiasts, 2 lads that just absolutely love the sport. Ballydoyle Valor, the apple of their eye. Pat McElligott has had plenty of good dogs in the past. A long time connection with Pat Buckley, and he'd just be delighted the way Knocknable Sid is running. And he's in the sport long enough to know that if he has a bit of luck on his side, he'll be thereabouts. But if it doesn't go his way, he's one of those that'll go, do you know what, we go again. And then, of course, Noel Hare owns and trains Quarterfinal Chick. And Noel has Derby winning pedigree. He was a joint owner of Shelburne Aston. Didn't train Shelburne Aston, of course. That was Pat Curtin, his great pal. But no, Noel is a very shrewd man with a greyhound. And some very talented dogs have gone through his hands in recent times. You always notice with Noel, always has a very good breed. Buys the best of pedigree, and obviously just rears them to perfection, because each and every dog he gets seems to go very, very well. He actually would have had JT Taylor for a short spell before he was sold to John Turner. He had bought him, raced him, sold him, and well, we know what JT Taylor was capable of in his day. So yeah, some good pedigree there, and some very enthusiastic owners, and that's what you want.
Yeah, she's, of course, one of 2 bitches left in. Quarterfinal Chicken in trap 1 in the 2nd semi-final is the other, the locally trained Churchill Hollyford, the Mankind Syndicate. Lynn Cook, the trainer, and she's been a real surprise in this year's Derby, Ian. She's going to need to use her local knowledge, though, from that inside draw.
She is. She's a daughter of Candlelight King, who, like, if you remember back to, he was such a professional tracker. He just never ran a bad race. it was a specialist around Sheffield, I believe, at the
Yeah,
time.
for Elaine Parker. Yeah,
He really was fantastic. And over the last 2 or 3 years, you've noticed a lot of his dogs, they just seem to be very good at the boxes. They're very good trappers. And this lady, well, that's what she's all about. She's very good at the start. She does maintain a strong gallop throughout. And if you look at her times, like, she's obviously just taken that step forward. She's July 18. She would have missed those couple of months earlier in the year with lockdown as well. So she's really developing. She has 10 races in the UK, 6 wins. The way she's running at the moment, no surprise if she was in the Derby decider. Like, she should lead up Lenson Whelan, and if Wolf and Dearjet Sydney come together, there's no reason why she couldn't be thereabouts on the corner. And if she is, she'll be very hard to keep out of the frame. She's running exceptionally well for them, and I wish them the best because, she's a really nice type. She's a 26.5 pound bitch, or 26.5 kilo bitch. She's running out of her skin, and, well, when a bitch is running in form, just keep following them. That's the rule of thumb, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In trap 2 goes the very experienced Lenson Whelan for Patrick Janssens. Wolf, who we'll talk plenty about in trap 3 for Graham Holland. Dearjet Sydney, who we know all about. We know that he's desperate to race towards the inside. He goes in 4. Smurf's Machine for Seamus Carr in 5, and Troy Firebird in 6. We've spoke about the bitch on the inside, but the main talking point in this semi-final has to be Dearjet Sydney, Ian, because he's plenty fast enough. But his tendency at Lids Rise is to look for that inside running rail. That's where he wants to be, and he will just make his way there regardless of what's in his way.
Yeah, there's no question about that. When I saw the draw, it was just head and hands job, because obviously I'm a massive fan of Wolf. He's one of our leading fancies. He's getting on in days, so this is probably one of his last chance to win a big one. Another big one. He won the Easter Cup earlier in the year, but my only thing about Dearjet Sydney, and it's the only hope I'm holding on to, is that when he did race from 4, he dived in. He's going to dive in, but as soon as he took the hefty bump, he straightened up.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that rather than Wolf and himself battling all the way into the corner where they're bashing, that they take a bump and then they straighten up. And that's our best hope, because if they do that, there is a chance of Wolf recovering into the opening corner and perhaps sitting not too far off the pace, and then sure, you're just hoping for a clear run around the opening bend. Smurf's Machine is one of the best drawn dogs in the history of greyhound racing in trap 5 for obvious enough reasons. He's going to have all the room in the world to get going, although it's worth noting that his best run did come from trap 6 last time out, but he has won from trap 5, he's won from trap 4. Troy Firebird well drawn on the outside too, because Smurf's Machine certainly not going to step out in him. It all depends on what happens in those first few strides. Perhaps Wolf is even better off if he slightly missed the kick and Dearjet Sydney takes an absolute flyer. I know Pat Buckley would be trying to get him to do that. If he did do a 488, which he is capable of doing, he just might clear the inside trio, and hopefully then Wolf get a clear run up in behind him. I'd love to see the 2 Irish runners going through for obvious enough reasons. I think Dearjet Sydney is more likely to qualify, but just Wolf is just a hero for, I think, to people on both sides of the water. He's just such a likable greyhound. But
yeah,
I mean, this is one of those races where anything could happen. Lenson Whelan actually spent time with Pat Buckley in his previous guys. He came from Pat Buckley's kennel across the water, so he knows a bit about him. But he really is up against the Lenson Whelan with such speed on both sides. Smurf's Machine is perhaps the best of the outside duo in terms of more likely to qualify. This is going to be a tight one. That race, I know we normally talk about the race to the opening corner, but this is the race to the first 15 yards. Just what's going to happen in those first few strides. I just hope that Dearjet Sydney takes an absolute flyer, scalds out of trap 4, avoids dogs, and then let the rest fall into place. And if the rest does fall into place, well, then we'll have no complaints, because hopefully the best 2 dogs will qualify behind Dearjet Sydney. I think Dearjet Sydney will win the race.
Yeah, and again, we've got connections that have been huge supporters of greyhound racing throughout the years. David Cartwright's the owner of Lenson Whelan for Patrick Janssens, of course, leading the Trainers' Championship in the UK here currently right now. Dearjet Sydney in track 4 for Irish trainer Pat Buckley in the English Derby for Scotsman Kenny Glenn, who's a massive supporter of greyhound racing. He has dogs with Pat Buckley and, of course, with Julie Bateson over here as well.
We highlighted him at the start of this, that he had a very strong team going into it with, I think there were, as you say, Julie Bateson had a couple of them, but no, listen, Kenny Glenn's putting money into the game, and I keep referring to these men. You know, it's all well and good people saying, "Oh, it's always the same." Listen, these are the men that are putting the money into the game. We need them. You know what I mean?
What can you tell us about Marion Maloney, the owner of Wolf?
Well, they would have bred him. They were the owner
okay.
breeders. So listen, they've been knocking on the door for quite some time. They've had a very, very fast breed over the last few years, and you know, obviously Wolf is right up there with the very fast they've had. But it's testament to them and the greyhounds they've produced over the years that it's no guarantee he is their fastest ever. You know, that says an awful lot about their breed over the last few years. Jalingo has been a superb brood bitch for them, but Wolf is a very special performer, and you know, obviously it'd be a great success for the Maloney's. They're a lovely family, and they're based down in Cork, and they always have a runner at Yaw. You know, every night of the week they'd have a runner at Yaw.
Okay.
They're great supporters of the sport down there, and yeah, listen, they'd be a very, very popular winner in that part of the country.
Yeah, I think he'd be a popular winner anyway. Wolf, a lot of people have latched onto him, sort of with him being the one of the oldest greyhounds in the Derby. Smurfs Machine for Rick Martin, Miles Simmons, and George Williams and Seamus Cahill were the owner there, and Troy Firebird as well for Mick Gallogly with his Troy prefix. Had some great dogs in recent years as well. Of course, Troy Bella, the top sprinter for Dave Mullin. To be good night, Ian.
From start to finish, Dave, as we said earlier on, you know, the standard of racing, even surrounding the two semi-finals, is just world class. Both of the 6 Bend races, as I said, but those 2 Derby semi-finals, you know, somebody's dreams are going to continue to live on. Other people's dreams are going to be dashed. And, you know, we're just hoping for no really bad luck stories. We're hoping that all 12 greyhounds come off the track safe and sound. And hopefully there'll be Irish representation in the final. But more importantly, hopefully we'll have the right 6 greyhounds in the final, because as a competition, it's been thoroughly enthralling from start to finish.
Absolutely. I won't ask you for the winner or even the 2 semi-final winners, but I'll ask you how many Irish trained greyhounds you think will be in the final, Ian.
I think there will be 3, with hopes and prayers that there might be 4. I cannot see all 5 qualifying. You know, obviously when you're looking at the talent that's around them, but no, I'm going to say 3. I think Pat Buckley might have 2. That's quite telling.
Quite telling indeed. We'll of course look forward to that next week, and we'll digest the semi-final action as well. The track is still open at Nottingham at the moment. Obviously plans are up in the air, landscape ever changing right now throughout the country. At the moment, you can book in the restaurant. Obviously, tables of up to 6 from the same household. At the moment, things can change. Hopefully, we won't see a Greyhound Derby behind closed doors, but it is a possibility at the moment. But the show goes on, which is the main thing. The stars are on the sand, and we look forward to the action. Thank you, Ian, as ever, for your company and expertise.
Yeah, and just once again, best luck to everyone that's still involved in the Derby. May the wind be at your back, and you know, may you be lucky in the coming hours.
Absolutely. And thanks to Ben Keith as well from Star Sports for joining us this week. Do remember to like and subscribe to the GBGB YouTube channel. Check out all the content on the social media platforms. And thanks, of course, for watching and listening. We'll see you again next week.